Okay, in this question, we're given a lot of very specific details. I'm going to do something that I can do in a Word document that maybe you can't do at home, but you can summarize the information. So let me pick this sentence, these sentences apart. It says we got Mr. Burns going to Miami and wants to rent a car there. Oops, get rid of that. Okay. Then we're told the price to rent the car is $25 and the first 100 miles are included. So that's one fact. After the first 100 miles, the price per mile is 50 cents per mile. We're also told the weekly rate is $100 plus 20 cents per mile. So we're given two different possibilities then. We can either rent the car per day or per week. And the weekly rate is for 7 days. So then we get to the math part, which situations would make the weekly rate more economical. Okay, so we're going to look at this in terms of daily and weekly and kind of see, okay, in this case, I'd want to pay the weekly rate because if I pay the daily rate, it's going to cost me such and such dollars. Okay, so let's go with this. He stays in Miami for 3 days and plans to drive 50 miles. Okay, so after the first 100 miles price, okay, so price to rent the car per day is $25. So 3 days times the 25, and that's going to give us the total amount. And if we're going a total of 50 miles, do we have to pay for anything else? The answer would be no, because the first 100 miles are included. So if I went the daily rate for this adventure, I'd be paying $75, whereas if I chose the weekly rate, I'd be paying 100 plus 0.2 times the 50. So I'm going to go pull up Excel for that. Okay, so let's see here. And I just realized, okay, let me scrunch that down. I'll put that back down in a second. All right, so in Excel, I want 100 plus 0.2 times 50. That gives me 110. Okay, so for this first trip that they're talking about here, the daily rate actually would be the better rate, and so that's the one I'm going to go for. I would save money if I went that route compared to what I would on the weekly rate. Okay, so scenario B, let me break this into daily and weekly as well. So daily, we're going to go 6 days. So 6 times 25, and we're going to drive 200 miles. Okay, so the first 100 is for free, and 100 miles after that is 50 cents a mile, so that'd be 0.5 times that second 100. And we'll go calculate that in a second. The weekly rate, if I went for 6 days, would be 100 plus 0.2 times the total miles. And so we get that. Okay, so what we got to calculate is how much each of those are, and then make the decision about which one is the cheapest. All right, so I'm going to go pull up our Excel friend again. All right, so we got equals 6 times 25 plus 0.5 times 100. So that's $200 for that route, and then 100 plus 0.2 times 200. And Mr. Slay forgot to put the equal sign in front. Let's do that. That's 140. So 200 here versus 140 here. And so the weekly rate would make the most sense in this case. It'd be the cheaper one. All right, so in this question, pretty straightforward. It's just asking us to calculate the mean, median, standard deviation of a group of numbers. So my first task is to open up any resources connected to that back from our earlier in the course. So there's actually a spreadsheet that does that for us, or at least helps us organize our thoughts. So let me pull that up. Okay, just in case it's been a while since you've seen that, this is what it looks like. Now, I am specifically asking about those three things, but all of these characteristics, the 5-number summary, the range, pretty much everything here is something that we've learned in the course. And the whole idea behind this review is to force you to think back to the topics that we learned at some point. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out the whole spreadsheet, even though we're not answering all of those questions. Those are all questions that could show up on the final exam for you. So my first task is to copy these sets of numbers over here. And as a teacher, if it's less than about 10 data values, I think that's okay to type manually by hand. So I'm going to go ahead and type in these numbers. And so if you want to pause the video, kind of type it in yourself so you can follow along with me, that would be great. Although as I'm expounding here, I'm kind of almost done. So let me get going here. Okay, so let me kind of zoom this up. Okay, oops, I'm going to let it down a little lower since I'm going to remind you of some Excel features. So my first task is I want to put these things in order so that maybe I want to calculate the median, or it's just easier if we have it in order. So if you remember, we go to data. So I highlight my numbers, I go to the data tab, and then I click the A to Z, and it's asking me, do you want everything or you just want the stuff you highlighted? I'm like, no, stuff I highlighted. So I'm going to click through that, and all that did is put the numbers in order. Okay, so to calculate the, let's see, how many data values are there? So right there, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 data values. And to calculate the mean, I want to add these all up and divide by that total. So in Excel, I have that sum feature where I can add those all up and divide by 8. So that gives me the mean. The median, I want to look at this in terms of, find the halfway point. So if there's 8 numbers, that means there's 4 above and below a certain value. So I'm going to do a little coloring here. And let's go those numbers there. And let's change it to the, now the coloring isn't important. It's just the idea that there's 4 numbers above, 4 numbers below. I just want to mentally keep that straight in my head. So if I'm calculating the median is look at the middle 2 numbers and add those up and divide by 2. So I want equals parentheses this guy plus this guy, divide that by 2. And so there's my median. Range is high minus low. So I'm going to take the highest number and subtract off the lowest number, and that'll give me what the range is. And then I can come in and, like I said, even though it doesn't ask this, I'm going to keep filling out information here. The minimum, that was the smallest number in the list. The max happened to have been the biggest number in the list. Q2 is the same as our median. And that brings us to Q1. Q1 is when I come into the lower half of the data, I look at the halfway point of the lower half. Well, the halfway point of the lower half involves these 2 numbers here. So there's 4 values. So I'm going to have to add up the middle 2 and divide by 2. If it turns out there's an odd number of values, I just go straight for the middle. But this time I have to do the add divide thing. So let's see, 3.1 to 4.6. So equals this number plus this number divided by 2. And so there's our Q1, and our Q3 is the same idea but with the top half. So I want to look at the middle 2 numbers there, add those up and divide by 2. So equals parentheses 7.3 plus 8.5 divide 2. Okay. Range rule of thumb, that one you get off the formula chart. That's take the range and divide it by 4. It's a rough estimate of what the standard deviation should be close to. Okay, so now that we did that, let's just jump in here and calculate standard deviation. So to calculate that, I need to fill out the rest of this chart. So I want to take the data minus the mean. So I want 3.1, so equals 3.1 subtract off the mean, and I want to make sure there's dollar signs around that one position. So I'm going to highlight this and hit either F4, or I'm just going to put dollar signs around it. It's not that bad just to do that manually. And what that does is that tells Excel to go always back to that one position. Then, if you remember from class or just playing with Excel, if I go to the corner, right here it's a white plus, make it a black plus, double click, fills out the rest of the chart for us. Then this next column says to take the number I just got, the data minus the mean, and square it. Well, that's just take the number times itself. And then I can do the same trick, white plus, go in the corner, make it a black plus, double click. Now I want to sum all those squared things that we just worked hard to get. So sum, highlight all that. This says take the number we just got and divide it by n minus 1. So take that 34.78, divide it by, well, if n was 8, because there are 8 numbers, then n minus 1 would be 7. So divide by 7. And the last part is find the square root, so SQRT, of the number we just worked hard to get. And there you go. So even though this only asked for 3 things, so it asked for the mean, it asked for the median, it asked for the standard deviation, there's a quick review of all the other things that we've learned related to data.